If payday is the moment the money comes in, why is that exactly when you start to lose control? That question is uncomfortable because it goes straight at an almost automatic belief that payday should be the calmest moment of the month, a point of relief, the moment when everything finally feels under control. But if you stop and look at it honestly, you might notice that reality is often the opposite. Right after the money hits your account, something shifts. Small expenses start to appear. Quick decisions feel harmless, and before you realize it, part of the money is already gone. This feels normal, but it isn't. Almost no one notices this, because the problem never seems to start at the beginning. Most people believe financial stress shows up at the end of the month, when the balance is already low and the pressure kicks in. But this is where the game starts to change. The pattern of people who always end up at zero isn't born in scarcity. It's born at the exact moment the money comes in. That's when financial behavior reveals itself, even if you don't notice it. Have you felt that before? That strange feeling that the money just arrived, but somehow it already doesn't feel fully available? If this sounds familiar, stay with me. What you're about to discover can completely change how you see payday, and more importantly, what's happening inside your mind at that moment. Because when the money comes in, it doesn't just change the number on the screen. It changes the way you feel, think, and decide. That's where almost everyone gets it wrong. The balance goes up, the tension seems to ease, and without realizing it, you start acting as if you have more room than you actually do. Small choices begin to stack up, not because you're irresponsible, but because this moment creates a quiet sense of permission. And this is exactly where many people start to recognize themselves in this story, even if they've never put it into words before. If, as you're listening to this, a specific memory comes to mind, a purchase made without thinking, an expense that felt too small to matter, it's worth sharing that in the comments. Not as a confession, but as recognition. When these experiences show up, other people realize they're not alone in this pattern. And if this conversation is helping you see money in a different way, leaving a like is a simple way to reinforce that this kind of reflection needs to keep existing. That's how this content reaches others who live with this same quiet tension every month. And if you feel like you want to keep going deeper into this topic, subscribing to the channel is almost a natural extension of this conversation, because what we're touching on here doesn't get resolved in a single video. Now, to understand why this behavior activates right at the beginning of the month, we need to look at what's happening inside your mind at the exact moment the money hits your account. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because what happens on payday has nothing to do with a lack of discipline or poor planning. What truly changes is the way your brain starts to operate. When the money comes in, something almost imperceptible happens behind the scenes in your mind. A higher balance doesn't just represent more resources available, it acts as an internal signal of safety. And that signal quietly shifts the standard your decisions are measured against. It's not that you decided to spend more. Your brain recalculated what feels allowed. What a few days earlier would have felt excessive, impulsive, or even irresponsible suddenly starts to sound reasonable. An app opened without thinking, a purchase you'd been putting off, a small expense that doesn't really make a difference. The problem is that this sense of room doesn't come from reality, it comes from perception. And perception, when it comes to money, is often deceptive. The brain doesn't work with spreadsheets, it works with feeling. A higher balance creates comfort. Comfort lowers your alertness, and when alertness drops, decisions shift automatically. Almost no one notices this turn because it doesn't arrive as a clear thought. You don't wake up saying, "Now I'm going to spend more." The process is far more subtle. Your mindset slips into an expansion mode, as if that money were more flexible than it truly is. This is where the hidden truth lives. The financial impact of payday doesn't happen through big choices, but through a sequence of micro decisions that feel harmless at the moment they're made. And when you add them all up, days later, the weight starts to show. This is one of the most uncomfortable revelations in this journey, because it shows that the behavior of people who always end up at zero isn't chaotic. It's predictable. There's an invisible pattern guiding decisions right at the beginning of the month, while everything still feels under control. And the more you trust that feeling, the deeper it works. If this is clarifying something inside you, drop a comment saying, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to go even deeper into this, because this is where one of the quietest traps in this journey shows up. Money hurts less when you have more of it. That's a truth almost no one accepts right away, but it explains why payday is, paradoxically, the most dangerous day of the month. When your balance is full, the emotional impact of spending drops. The brain loses sensitivity. It's as if the internal brake gets weaker, not because you chose to relax it, but because the feeling of safety numbs your alertness. In that state, spending doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like movement, something normal, manageable, almost irrelevant. You swipe the card, tap confirm, accept a recurring charge, and nothing inside you reacts strongly enough to stop it. And that's exactly why this phase is so deceptive. You don't feel the mistake when it happens. There's no immediate pain, no clear guilt, no flashing red warning. There's just the impression that everything is under control. The problem is that the real impact doesn't show up at the moment of the decision. It hides in the background, waiting for time to pass. Days later, when the balance no longer feels comfortable, those choices start to pile up. The total comes as a surprise. Regret always arrives late, because it only shows up once the money has lost its ability to shield you from the feeling of loss. And then, the mind tries to understand where it all started, without realizing that the origin was exactly the moment when there seemed to be extra room. This is an uncomfortable revelation, because it breaks the idea that danger lives in big mistakes. In reality, the greatest impact comes from a sequence of small decisions made under emotional anesthesia. And the more this cycle repeats, the more it shapes your mindset, creating a pattern that's hard to see while you're inside it. If this is hitting something in your own story, leave a comment saying, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to go even deeper into this because this is where many people get lost in their own narrative. There's a very strong belief that financial problems get solved by increasing income, as if earning more were automatically the beginning of real change. But for people living inside this pattern, reality is often very different. The salary goes up, extra money comes in, a new source of income appears, and zero is still there, waiting at the end of the month. This doesn't happen because of bad luck or a lack of opportunity. The hidden truth is that the internal system doesn't change at the same pace as the money. The brain doesn't ask how much you need. It adapts to how much came in. It's as if, with every raise, a new size of life is created without you even noticing. What once felt like a luxury becomes normal. What used to be an exception turns into routine. And just like that, without any conscious decision, spending patterns expand along with income. The more that comes in, the more the internal system stretches, filling all the available space. This is one of the most uncomfortable revelations in this journey, because it shows that earning more can actually make the problem worse when the mindset stays the same. That's why some people never manage to accumulate, even though they're capable, hardworking, and full of plans. The behavior isn't tied to the size of the paycheck, but to the way decisions get recalibrated every time money increases. No matter how much comes in, the brain finds a way to bring the balance back to zero. And the longer this cycle repeats, the stronger it becomes behind the scenes, creating the feeling that something is always missing even when it isn't. This pattern creates a quiet impact, because it steals not just money, but the sense of progress. You work more, push harder, but never see the transformation happen. And over time, this starts to generate frustration, exhaustion, and even a sense of mistrust toward your own money. If this describes your journey in any way, leave a comment saying, "I'm on this journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into this," because everything we've talked about so far points to a truth that almost no one wants to face. The mistake doesn't happen at the moment of purchase. It happens before the first expense, before the card is swiped, before any visible decision is made. The real trigger activates at the exact moment the money comes in. That's when something shifts inside quietly, while everything still looks normal on the outside. When the balance goes up, the mind enters a state that redefines priorities without asking for permission. It's not a clear thought, and it's not a rational choice. It's a series of invisible micro-adjustments happening behind the scenes. What once felt unnecessary starts to feel justifiable. What seemed excessive suddenly has a good reason. And just like that, before you spend a single dollar, the path is already laid out. Future decisions have already been tilted in a specific direction without you realizing it. This is the most dangerous part of the journey because it leaves no obvious trail. There's no glaring mistake to fix, just a sequence of internal permissions quietly stacking up. The hidden truth is that by the time you try to solve this by spending better, you're already late. The real impact is born in the mindset that forms at the beginning of the month, in that moment when the money arrives and the sense of control grows along with it. There is a way to break this pattern, but it doesn't start with spreadsheets, harsh cuts, or sheer willpower. It starts with understanding a specific detail of human behavior that almost no one notices on payday, and that completely changes your relationship with money over time. If you think the problem is learning how to spend better, you haven't reached the most dangerous part yet. If this stirred something in you, leave a comment saying, "This makes sense to me." If you've made it this far, it's because something in this conversation genuinely reached you, and when that happens, it's usually a sign that this journey still has a lot more to reveal. Subscribing to the channel isn't about numbers, it's about continuing to explore this kind of clarity, a deeper understanding of decisions that almost no one explains, but that shape an entire lifetime. Staying close is a way to keep this conversation alive and keep untangling these invisible knots together. If this message found you at the right moment, leave a comment saying, "This message was for me." That helps create a space where others can recognize themselves too and realize they're not alone in this pattern. And if at some point in the video you felt that quiet connection, that sense of someone finally put this into words, a like is a simple gesture that helps keep this kind of content circulating here. There's a video right here that perfectly complements everything we talked about today. It explores the same idea from a different angle and can help you notice details that might still be slipping by. Click it and keep going with me there.